morning, people. Tory MP and Boris Johnson hype woman Nadine Dorries has finally quit as an MP, 2 months after saying she would do so with immediate effect, and having not spoken in Parliament for over a year because she's such a hard worker. But I want to talk about her resignation letter, which is an all-out attack on Rishi Sunak, because now that she's no longer inside the Tory gang, she's actually honest. To an extent. So let me show you my favourite bits of it. When I arrived in mid-Bedfordshire in 2005, I inherited a Conservative majority of 8,000. Over 5 elections, that has increased to almost 25,000, making it one of the safest seats in the country, a legacy I'm proud of. In 2019, she got 60% of the vote in her constituency, but 25,000 people voted for other parties. And under the first-past-the-post voting system, which she's consistently voted for, the votes of any party that doesn't come first are just thrown away. So what she's bragging about there is that 25,000 people will never have any democratic power ever. She goes on, London is now losing its appeal as more UK-based companies seek better listing opportunities in the US. That, Prime Minister, is entirely down to you. Pointing out that Conservative Party policies have damaged the financial sector in London when Brexit has costed thousands of jobs and made businesses move abroad, amazing. Why is it that we've had 5 Conservative Prime Ministers since 2010, with not one of the previous 4 having left office as the result of losing a general election? That is a democratic deficit, which the mother of all parliaments should be deeply ashamed of. Okay, so your argument is that the Prime Minister of the UK should be decided based on democracy, based on the will of the people, right? This you, Nads?
The Conservative Party donors have said themselves that they aren't going to support the party if the Prime Minister is removed. I think a number of MPs in marginal seats need to hear that and need to understand what they're doing. £18 million those donors have donated to the Conservative Party over recent times. It's those donors that have helped us to win the election, and they need to hear that message.
Because it looks to me like she thinks the Prime Minister of the UK should be decided based on the opinion of whichever billionaire gives the Tory party the most money. I'd call that a democratic deficit. But worst of all has been the spectacle of a Prime Minister demeaning his office by opening the gates to whip up a public frenzy against one of his own MPs. Attacks from people led by you declared open season on myself, and the past weeks have resulted in the police having to visit my home and contact me on a number of occasions due to threats to my person. Now, is it wrong that she's being physically threatened? Yes. Absolutely. And I say that as somebody who believes that every Tory in Parliament deserves to have their lives ruined for what they've done to this country. But physical threats are a line that we do not cross. However, she made Boris Johnson being Prime Minister her mission in life, and Boris Johnson consistently used violent language when describing the opponents to Brexit. And when MPs told him that they were receiving death threats because of his language, knowing that an MP had already been murdered in relation to Brexit, he told them that the best way to avoid being murdered was to support his Brexit deal. So the man she put in charge very much created this climate of political violence that she's now complaining about. Not to mention her retweeting this kind of shit. And she goes on to continue defending Boris Johnson by saying to Rishi Sunak, since you became Prime Minister, his manifesto has been completely abandoned. We cannot simply disregard the democratic choice of the electorate, remove both the Prime Minister and the manifesto commitments they voted for, and then expect to return to the people in the hope that they will continue to unquestioningly support us. Now, for starters, your party only got 44% of the vote. The majority voted for parties that would have taken us in the opposite direction. So your manifesto itself simply disregarded the democratic choice of the electorate. Also, your main manifesto commitment was to get Brexit done, specifically saying no more renegotiations. And yet within 6 months, Boris Johnson was vowing to fix the unfair Brexit deal. So neither Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak give a shit about what voters want. But keep going, because if you want to tell people not to vote Tory, I'm not going to stop you. And you have completely failed in reducing illegal immigration or delivering on the benefits of Brexit. The bonfire of EU legislation swerved. Boris Johnson was Prime Minister for 3 years. He negotiated the exit deal with the EU. He negotiated the trade deal with the EU. He then had 2 years as Prime Minister when we were out of the EU. So if Brexit isn't a success, that's on him too. And because of Brexit, Northern Ireland hasn't had a government in Stormont for over a year. And so Rishi Sunak negotiated the Windsor Agreement to try and deal with that. The Windsor Framework Agreement, a dead duck brought into existence by shady promises of future preferment with grubby rewards and potential gongs to MPs, Stormont is still not sitting. So you're attacking Rishi Sunak for failing to fix a problem that Boris Johnson created. Okay. By the way, when she says gongs for MPs, she means when Prime Ministers give out knighthoods and make some people members of the House of Lords. And given that she initially resigned because she wasn't given her own gong, the bitterness is bittering. But she continues to dismantle Tory propaganda with this. Disregarding your own Chancellor, last week you took credit for reducing inflation, citing your plan. There's been no budget, no fiscal measures, no debate, there is no plan. Such statements take the British public for fools. The decline in the price of commodities such as oil and gas, the eased pressure on the supply of wheat and the increase in interest rates by the Bank of England are what has taken the heat out of our economy and reduced inflation. For you to personally take credit for this was disingenuous at the very least. It's honestly incredible the extent to which these politicians know they're telling you lies. They know what the truth is. All the stuff that people like me spend our lives trying to put out there, they already know it. They're just choosing not to say it because it benefits them. Because now she's finally out of the club and she doesn't have to hide the bullshit, it's all coming out. And regarding the polling numbers that show the Tories are about to lose the next election, she says, "Your actions have left some 200 or more of my MP colleagues to face an electoral tsunami and the loss of their livelihoods." Well, here's some good news, Nads. Those 200 MP jobs will simply go to other people because that's how elections work. But she goes on. Levelling up has been discarded, and with it, those deprived communities it sought to serve. I am a proud working-class conservative, which is why the levelling up agenda was so important to me. Really? Because levelling up was supposed to be about tackling regional inequality by getting more money and resources to the towns and people that really need it across the country. But let's look at Nadine Dorries' voting record. Nadine Dorries has only ever voted for reducing the funding of local government. She's voted to reduce welfare benefits 41 times. She's voted against raising sick pay 14 times. Meanwhile, she's always voted against taxing bankers' bonuses and consistently against increasing the taxes on people who earn over £150,000 a year. So, hero of the northern working class, this woman is not. And finally, you have abandoned the fundamental principles of conservatism. History will not judge you kindly. But if you asked most conservatives, they would tell you that conservatism means things like being sensible with the nation's economy. But both Nadine Dorries and Boris Johnson supported a no-deal Brexit that would have made the economy literally collapse.
I think it's a great shame that we've missed the opportunity to come out at no deal.
Conservatives would also say that conservatism includes the government not getting involved in our personal lives, especially when it comes to free speech. And yet Boris Johnson and Nadine Dorries, they passed a law that breaches our right to protest. And Nadine Dorries tried to set the police on Steve Bray for simply shouting her name outside Parliament. So traditional conservatism was abandoned long before Boris Johnson got the axe. But Nadine Dorries going after Rishi Sunak like this, sadly, like too many politicians, she's just proving the Joker right.
See, their morals, their code, it's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
Again, we have to focus all our energy on getting Keir Starmer to give us a fair voting system when he takes power so that we can get a better class of politician into that place. I'm Femi. Have a great week.